Okay, welcome everybody. I'm going to go ahead and get started. I have it just like a minute or so after the scheduled time. I'm Greg Perrier. I'm a professor in biology at the Northern Virginia Community College, which we call NOVA, which is located just out of Washington, D.C. in the United States. I also manage the college region in Second Life, which is shown on the slide here, is what you're actually seeing. My avatars are Dodge Threebeards, which you see here. Dodge is the general one. He does the construction, the building, networking off the campus. And then my other avatar is Greg Perrier, who's the professor avatar who works with students and very seldom leaves the region there. He actually has my face, my real-life face, so the students can recognize me and stuff. So I have worked with two avatars. This one is Dodge Threebeards. I'm going to talk in voice, but I'll provide chat text for those who maybe aren't hearing well or for who English isn't their first language, and they could do better reading it than listening to it. I want to share a bit of my background first before we get going too far. I came into Second Life in January of 2010 at a professional development workshop that my college was doing. And I had seen in a magazine article a few months before that about using Second Life for education. I saw an image of a professor standing in front of a class lecturing. And I thought that would be kind of interesting, so I could try to do something with this technology, with this virtual world tool to try to enhance my classes. So I soon learned that was not very practical. It's not easy to do a face-to-face class in Second Life. It has a lot of problems. But I got in, I stayed in, and I spent my first 6 months really just exploring what are people doing in education in Second Life. I spent a lot of time at ISTE, the International Society for Technology and Education. They had 3 regions at the time, a very big program in Second Life. They had workshops for people who are new. They had socials. They had docents there to help you with questions, and I met a lot of educators there and visited a lot of other educational regions in Second Life. I started off by having my office hours jointly in my real office and in Second Life, and students coming in. You'll see an image of that later. But the NOVA people, the managers of our NOVA region didn't want us building anything, the faculty to build anything on the region. So I ended up going to Tidewater Community College for over a year. They're a sister institution in the state of Virginia, and they invited me to come. They gave me a parcel to do anything I wanted with. So I really got started at a different institution there. In January of 2012, our region manager retired, and they asked me if I would take over being the manager. And so I came back to the NOVA region, left Tidewater, and started working there. In 2011, we had no faculty and no students active on the region, NOVA's region in Second Life. Last year, we had over 600 students. We have quite a few faculty. We have 20 different things in STEM, basically STEM's for science, technology, engineering, and math. But most of our stuff is in science, which is kind of appropriate for the science circle here. And so we do a lot of science activities there. Most of our students are doing science stuff in Second Life. So I started thinking about a year ago, I started thinking, what have we learned from all this? I've been trying to use this virtual world as a educational tool. I made a lot of mistakes and stuff. I learned a lot from seeing what people were doing, both the good and the bad. And so I've come back and tried to put this together and just, so what have we learned? And so I've got 66 lessons. I just started writing down things I learned. I had the list is now at 66. Not sure that's complete. I've figured out 70 different ways that educators can use virtual worlds to enhance their class and teaching. and also for professional development. And so today what I want to do is just share some of the main themes that have emerged from that. The presentation is going to be in 3 parts. First, we're going to look at what has not worked, some of the classic mistakes we made, things we want to avoid in the future. Then we'll look at what has worked, things I found to be very useful. And then talk a bit about how do we build on these lessons? Where do we go from here with this? So that's what I want to do today. So what did not work? You know, we've been, everybody came in 2007, 8, 9, 10. A lot of higher education institutions came into Second Life. We made a lot of mistakes. Many of them have left. What are some of those mistakes, though, things that we really want to avoid in the future? That's what we want to talk about here. We're going to go over some of the classic ones. So one of the big ones is assume that if you build something there, that faculty and students will come in and use it. And you had this huge disconnect between the builders, who are either contractors or IT staff at the institution, and the faculty who are supposed to use it. And this slide highlights that. I came to visit this campus the day before they're going to have their open house. This is their first opening up this university campus in Second Life. And I had a notice they're going to have that. So I came in just to have a look. The builder's still there working, doing the final touches. And I'm a plant ecologist, so I see this greenhouse. I go, wow, this is really cool. It's a nice greenhouse. It's really well done. So I asked the guy, how are you going to use this? What classes are going to use this? Who's going to be using this? He had no idea. It's not his job. His job is to build it. And he doesn't build it with them in the end result in mind, or how people are going to use this for class. So you want to avoid that type of stuff. You don't want to build things and just assume people are going to come and use it, because they won't. It just doesn't work. This campus is hardly used at all. And the reason being that the people who build it are not the people who need to use it. Another classic mistake we made is spending a lot of time and cost to recreate the real campus. This is a lovely build. It takes a lot of time to build this sort of structure, but it's a waste of time. This is the last place you want to send newbie students in to try to do a class. This is not an educational building. This is going in a Second Life environment. You can do so much better. And you ask these people, why in the world do you put all this time and effort to build this signature building for the campus? And well, the administrators want that. No, the administrators wanted students learning on this campus, and this is why they're not there anymore. These things are mainly gone because they're not conducive to education in a virtual world environment. You know, most newbies couldn't even open the door to get into this facility. So that's one of the, we want to avoid doing that. Another big mistake we made, and I made this myself, thinking that if we build it, the faculty are going to be excited about this. I want to come in and look at this. And I showed it to lots of people, and hardly anybody ever came in and used it. Why not? Why don't they use it? Well, we're competing with a lot of online learning tools. We're just one of many. Our textbooks now come with web pages and online information that the students are supposed to use and stuff. A very steep learning curve for a virtual world compared to some of these other online tools. They're more dynamic. You can do a lot more in a virtual world than just looking at an object on a web page. But you've got to learn, for the faculty, they got to learn how to function. And you really want to be at a certain proficiency, comfort level before you start interacting with students. You don't want to be sitting upside down in chairs or falling off of sidewalks while you're interacting with students. And so basically the faculty are too busy to invest the time to develop the skill set to be in there. We have about 5 faculty who are really active on our region. but we have a lot more faculty who are sending students in there, and we'll talk about that in a while, how that works. How about the students? Well, we thought, wow, students might be excited about this. Well, not necessarily. Some are, but we have quite a few who aren't. So, as you can see, this is data from 2013. These don't add up to 100 because they're taken from different questions. But just to give you a flavor for what we get on this survey, 25%, a quarter of them, they enjoyed it. Yeah, this is, it was fun. It's a little bit more than 25% saying it's a very nice way to learn. These are your hands-on students. They're interactive. They want to go in and play with things and stuff. But 20% didn't enjoy it. And we had over 10% that just hated it. They would write on my evaluations, please do not do Second Life. Now, we've come a long ways. We asked the question, why don't those people like it? What's that 11% there? Why do they hate it? And we've changed a lot of things. I think if we did this today, that would probably be down about 5%. And our enjoyed it and find a nice way to learn would be up around 50%. But we haven't done that recently. Something we can look at doing. But just know that not all your students are going to love it. And some are really not going to like it at all. Another kind of classic mistake we made is thinking we're going to replace what we do in real life education, do it in Second Life. So doing a face-to-face classroom. And I told you I saw this in a magazine, and it was one of the reasons I went to the workshop on Second Life. I could see myself doing this. So we have days when the campus is closed or something. I could just hold the class here in Second Life. There's a lot of problems with this. One of the problems from the student point of view, they can't hear. They're crashing. There's a lot of lag when you have these many students in one place. There's all sorts of these sorts of issues that the students are experiencing. And look at those. They're all newbies. These are not people with lots of experience. You can just tell from their avatars. Over half of them look like they're totally asleep and not the nicest lecturing environment. And so from the point of view of the lecture, you lose the dynamics of a lecture. You don't have the facial expressions. You're not able to move around the room as you would, engage people, ask questions, the sort of things that you would do in a real lecture. And so if you can co-locate the people into one classroom, it's much better to do it in a real-world environment rather than doing it in Second Life. And when my campus is closed because of a snow day or a hurricane or whatever, half of my students can't even get into the web anyway. Their electricity's down and stuff like that. So we have, it's not a real useful replacement for the classroom for me. There are times when it is useful, and this is a university that uses this facility you're seeing here, this classroom, to bring students in from high schools around the state. So these students can be 300 or 400 miles apart, and they can't co-locate. And these high schools have dedicated computers that will not crash. They can give the sound and stuff that these students will use to come in and do an orientation at this university, which is a very clever use of Second Life, I think, the way they use it. And obviously, we have people sitting here listening to this who are from different parts of the world that couldn't co-locate very easily. So there are times when lecturing in Second Life or presenting slides in Second Life is useful, but generally you lose a lot of the dynamics of the lecture. So what we want to do is, and we'll talk later, work to the strengths of the virtual world rather than trying to work around these weaknesses. In line with this is one of the things that I had to learn, and many people do, is that when you're teaching in a virtual world, you've got to think about other things. In a real world, I worry about what if my projector bulb goes out on my slides, or what if my fire alarm goes off? What do I do? Well, we have similar things, but different in a virtual world, and many of us never thought about that. What happens if the region restarts? What happens if your students are crashing? They can't hear. There's lag. All these sorts of issues are going on. This is interesting. This is how I kind of got aware of this stuff. This is a law school. in the United States that uses Second Life to do role play. And so these students, the ones sitting on the pillows, are students. The person standing up is the professor. I was invited to observe this class, and we were at their place. And 10 minutes into it, on the screen pops, this region will restart in 5 minutes. Wow, what do you do? The professor had no idea. I really had no idea. You got right in the middle of this exercise, and all these newbies, students, aren't going to have a clue what to do, where to go. So fortunately, I had the place at Tidewater. This is my area at Tidewater Community College. And I said, let's go there. And we brought all the students in, in time, so nobody crashed out. And we did the exercise there. But it made me realize there are different issues you got to deal with in a virtual world. It's not the same as a real world. And so when you do a lesson plan, you've got to kind of incorporate, what do I do if this happens? How are we going to deal with these issues? Another issue we have is grants. Heavy reliance on grant funding. I know 2 higher education institutions that totally closed down in Second Life in the last year, totally due to grants. They lost their grant funding. Grant funding came to an end, and the whole program was supported by grants. Your fixed costs, your tithe to Linden Labs, and your if you're paying a manager, your manager fees, these have to be covered by the institutional budget, or you're going to lose your program. So we only pay $1,770 a year to Linden Labs for our space, but the NOVA pays that. I don't have to get grant money to cover that. If you're starting up a new program and you're starting with grant money, you're going to have to quickly get your program up to the point where the administration of your institution will support it. Grants are great. We've had 4 grants in the last 2 years. We use them to build new activities on the campus. We've got some really fun activities totally built by grants, but we don't use them for our fixed core costs, because if we do that, as soon as the grant's over, our whole campus is gone. We can't support it anymore. So heavy reliance on grant funding really doesn't work. Another issue I've encountered is people working in isolation. We have educators who come in, they have an idea, they want to do something, but they don't really take the time to interact or network to see how can they make this really better. What can they bring in? What can they, from the learning others have had, to make this a really useful long-term dynamic build? This is at a major U.S. university. They had a $35,000 grant to build this. That's a lot of money for Second Life. I wouldn't even know what to do with that much money on our campus for building anyway. And there was a study to see if they can do virtual labs, chemistry labs in Second Life, and that the students had the same learning as they would if they did for students who did it in a real classroom, a real laboratory on the campus. So they compared 2 sets of students, those doing the lab in Second Life and those doing it on campus. They found there was no difference in the learning, which is great to know. But they spent that $35,000 on this building, basically, which is not used. All the labs are on skyboxes in the sky. They've got faculty classrooms or offices in here. Nobody uses them. They've got a huge atrium. Nobody uses it. They've got a really kind of cool looking chemistry lab in there, but they don't use that. Everybody goes to the sky to do the laboratories. So they didn't need all this building. What they really needed was to have a lot more skyboxes with more labs up there, because they have 2 of the about 12 labs the students would do over a semester. And as a consequence, without getting some experience, going out and talking to people, how can we make this really cool and lasting and permanent and something that's going to be used for a long time, they just built it, and it's not being used now. It's gone. It's probably not going to be around much longer. The grant money's gone. So it's the sort of thing of thinking how, network, so you know how you can do this stuff better. Two more slides on what to avoid, or what not to do. This is our campus Nova long ago, probably about 2000 and end of 2010. And I started doing my office hours. They would not let me build anything there. Discourage innovation by faculty members on the campus. It was really frustrating. I had to put chairs out, and the students didn't even use the chairs. They're popping in to talk to me. One of the students had gone to NASA and picked up a spacesuit. That's kind of fun. And so my students are coming and talk to me, but when they're gone, office hours were over. I had to take all the chairs away. They did not want me to build here. And so this is why I went to Tidewater. I could build, I had a nice place there. Notice the kiosk in the back right. That's the same area today. You can kind of see the kiosk off to the right there at the top. And so the very first thing I did when I took over the campus was to put in an office area. For anybody can use it, but easy seating, permanent. It took a long time to find seats that students new to Second Life can sit in without any problems and stuff like that. No, it's on a lake, there are birds singing. It's really a nice facility. Students come and say, wow, this is nice. And they enjoy coming in and talking to you there. So discouraging faculty is really a mistake. And you get that because the IT people build it. They have it the way they want it. Don't mess with it, so what they're saying. And that doesn't work too well. So what works? Let's go to the positive. We've kind of looked at things to avoid. But let's get at what works, things that we want to incorporate into our learning here. This is a different type of build. This is not that administrative building we saw. This is on an island that does science and genetics. It's a tower. This tower would not stand up in real life. It would fall over. We don't have the physical building constraints of real life. We can do much nicer, fun, innovative things. And it's interesting how difficult that is for people to wrap their mind around initially, including myself. When I went in, I didn't think of myself being, our classroom is a tree house. It's on top of trees and in the sky. I never would have thought of that, but I saw this at other places when I went visiting and go, wow, that's really neat. And so what you want to do is be creative with your builds, make them open, easy for avatars to move around in, and these sorts of things. And so this is sort of the opposite of making that big, clunky, brick and mortar building that we tended to do initially, and doing something that's more innovative and more conducive to education in a virtual world. This is our signature building on the Nova campus. When I took over, I told them I wouldn't get rid of it. In 2016, the summer there, we took grant money and totally rebuilt it. We went from 900 prems down to 200. We put it into mesh. And we redesigned the campus in a way, this wide sidewalks. We're designing for people who have been in Second Life for 2 or 3 hours, not 2 or 3 years. Most of us who are building have been in Second Life for 2 or 3 years. So yeah, I can walk down this sidewalk really easily, but a new person has trouble. I can move around the campus very easily, but a new person has trouble. We made the doors wide, blew away the doors. There are no doors. Just walk in. Doors can be difficult. My second day in Second Life, I couldn't open a door. How do you open these doors? I couldn't figure it out. But you forget about that after a couple of years, and you just build things, for people who've been in Second Life longer. So we got to build for newbies. Our students used to have trouble finding their way around the campus to the different sites. Now we're at 20 different science activities. So you see that telephone booth there in the middle. That's how you move around. We put that in the summer of 2016 too. They're all over campus. You go in there, you can teleport to any activity we have. And once the students know that, they're popping all over the place. And they don't have any difficulty finding things. So make it easy for them. Make it so it's for a person who's been there for just a few hours. And what you're going to find is the people who have trouble and hate Second Life, that percent of your students goes down. Because they hate Second Life because it was frustrating. They couldn't load it on their computer. Once they got in there, they couldn't move around. They couldn't do things. And so you've got to make it so that it's easy for them. We talked about teaching in a classroom, a face-to-face sort of thing in Second Life. That's not the best use of Second Life, but there are some ones that are much better to do in Second Life. So work to the strengths of using a virtual world, not to its weaknesses. And so this is a forest. We have many of the tree species we have on our forest on campus. I can take the students out into the forest on campus and do this activity. It's a forest ecology activity. But we have a lot of labs that would be doing this. Some of those labs are at night. It's very difficult to go in the forest at night. Some days you want to go in the forest, the lab is scheduled, but it's raining or snowing, not very useful. And we have ticks in this forest, on our real forest with Lyme's disease. So another issue. So we have issues of taking students into the forest. So by recreating this forest in Second Life, we avoid those problems. We can do the exact same data collection in Second Life that we can do in the real world, but we can do it a lot easier. So we're working to the strengths of a virtual world classroom rather than to its weaknesses. And so this is what you really want to do, start focusing on how can this make things better for us using a virtual world, as opposed to pounding our head against the wall trying to fit what we do into the virtual world. Use the virtual world to do other things that are maybe just a little different than you thought they would be. I thought I'd be teaching face-to-face in Second Life, but I'm doing something different here, but it works a lot better. The opportunistic. For those of you from the tropics, this is snow. This is what a snow day looks like in our area, and our campus closes. And when our campus closes, our dean decided all the labs have to be made up online somehow. And so I went to the dean and said, most of our labs that we do in biology, we can do in Second Life on our virtual campus. And so the dean sent an email out to the faculty and said, you will do your labs in Second Life. We went from 200 students a year on the campus. That year we had 800. It was a busy place the week following this snowstorm. The campus was closed the whole week, so we had lots of labs that had to be made up here. And all those faculty, they learned, oh yeah, there's a Second Life program, and students can go in and do this stuff, and it's easy to do. And so we now got more faculty using it. And so, well, the dean was really just looking for, how do I deal with this issue? You know, we have to do these online labs. And I said, we got them. They said, do it. And it worked. And so be opportunistic, though. See a problem on your campus in real life. What's a real problem we have? Well, it closes for every now and then for a reason. You know, I'm sure all the campuses down in Houston and Florida are closed down for a while. How do you make those things up? How can we use virtual worlds to help solve these sort of problems that we're having? So a big thing for us was the snowstorm. And so I love spring semester because we usually close for a couple of days due to snow every semester, and we get our numbers go up in spring semester compared to our fall semester. I talked about the fact that you cannot get your faculty to come into Second Life. It's really hard to do. And so I've given up on trying, really. So what do? Well, to get around that problem, we make it really easy for the faculty. There are handouts that I have developed for each of those 20 science activities we have. They have a handout. There's a separate handout. The students tells them how to get an avatar and load the program on their own computer. We use Firestorm, get to the campus in Second Life. But then each activity has a handout. And the faculty just simply have to post those handouts on Blackboard for their students. They never have to get an avatar. They never have to come into Second Life. I recommend they do. I'll sneak in some night and try to do the activity so you can relate to what the students are doing, but most of them don't. We have very good records of who's on our campus, and we very seldom see a faculty member come in. So I give it up. I don't expect them to come in. They don't have to come in. Their students do. The students are getting a grade for this, and so the students will come in and do this. And so give the handouts. Find a way that your faculty can still use the virtual world without the huge cost of becoming proficient, the time cost it takes to get in there and become proficient in the virtual world. And so this is how we've done it with handouts. There might be other ways to do it, but I've just accepted they're not going to come in, and I'm not going to try to do that, to try to force them to do it. Another thing to try to do in your campus is to promote it within the institution. When I took over in January of 2012, if you asked 100 faculty members, do we have a region in Second Life, only maybe 10 would have said yes. Today, probably 90 will say yes. Because every chance I get, I put this out in newsletters on Second Life, on the campus, throughout the college, that we have this facility, what we're doing. This was a tour that was being made. They actually shot a film of it, and I sent this to one of our dean and provost, just to let them know that we had this visit to our region in Second Life, and there's a video, they can watch it. And the next thing I knew, it was in a newsletter with a photo. So it's great, but people, most people get to know that we have this, and sometimes people ask me questions. How can I do this? How can I use it? Our art history people are starting to get involved in here. Our Chinese language people are getting involved. And the way they found out about it is through this promotions that we do on the campus. So you really want to get in and promote it widely. Another thing that has really been helpful for me is networking. We talked about working in isolation, but you really want to get out and see what's out there, what other people are doing, and give tours of your facility. This is VISTE, this is the Virginia Society for Technology and Education. They've come in for a tour. This was probably in early 2012. The campus looks totally different now. This is when I first took over. One of the first builds we put in, they're looking at here. This is their second tour. Their first tour is when I first joined. I actually joined the tour with them. I'd only been in Second Life for a week. This tour I gave, and then they came in last summer to look at our new build. So we get frequent tours we give of the campus, but we also go on other tours. We go what other people are doing and network, be involved in all these associations that are working in virtual world education. VISTE's one, ISTE, virtual roundtable, education roundtable, these sorts of things are in there. Virtual pioneers, all these guys are in there doing things, but you need a network, because what's coming down? Well, Sansar, what's that going to be like? Virtual reality is coming down. All these things you got to be involved with and be thinking about and networking with people who are looking at these things and stuff. This is how you function in here. One thing that has helped us a lot also is to develop a mix of activities in Second Life. As you can see, here's stuff on our campus. We have 22 activities, 20 in science. And people come and say, can I do a tour of your campus? Can you give me a tour of your campus? Yeah, it's going to take me 4 or 5 hours to show you everything. So our tours are now the three latest activities we can show people. We have a lot there. So when a faculty member comes in and says, oh, how can I use this? Show them all these things we have. This is our classroom. It's a treehouse. I said it sits about 50 people. I don't do lectures there. This is a tour coming in from there's a college near us that actually offers a class in education in virtual worlds. And their class was visiting. It'd be an interesting class to take, actually. We have posters, as you're seeing there in the middle top. We do virtual role play here in a medical camp. We have a medical clinic for role play. Office hours, you've seen that. the forest. That's a cell on the bottom right. So these are different things that we have in there. Just a wide mix of things, different possibilities. I had a faculty member just last week say, I want to do a poster session in your Second Life. We have the poster area there. It's all set up. It's easy to do. And they see this, and that gives them ideas of how they can do it. They do things. We talked about not building in isolation like the greenhouse in that very first slide. Well, this is an example of how you don't do it. This is how you build with your faculty members. We had faculty members that they want a brain. They want a model brain their students can go and look at. This is developed a bit more now. We have numbers on the parts of that brain. The students have to identify the numbers, match them to a list of brain parts. So we worked really closely as we built this. This was grant money to build this. We worked very closely with the faculty members who want it. What structures do you want? What ones do you want highlighted? Which ones you want to stand out in green and purple and stuff, so the students can easily work at this. So you really go back and forth. Our builds now are working with the builders. I don't build very well our script at all, and so I work with people who do. I hire them on grant money, and then I work with the faculty who are going to use that build to make sure we're meeting their pedagogical needs. Now, are we going to be able to use this as a learning tool effectively? Let's talk a little bit about workshops for faculty. It's very hard to get faculty to come in. When I took over the region in 2012, I started lots of workshops. I've done probably 5 or 6 workshops for faculty on Second Life. And initially when I did it, they all come in, we give everybody avatars. I have about 20 training avatars. I can just give it to them so they don't have to worry about getting an avatar. And they'd roll around the campus, fly, fall off things, fly into walls, all these sorts of things, worry about their appearance. All the things people do when you're first in. We all did it. But what they're learning is that this is hard. There's a huge, steep learning curve here. And they'd never come back. They'd all be excited and laughing and stuff in the workshop, but they'd never come back. So what I do now is, oops, I haven't changed the slide, sorry. So what I do now is I focus on how do we use virtual worlds as an educational tool. Show them those 17 different ways they can use this for professional development, some of them, but most of those are for working with students, enhancing the education. And then they get excited. Wow, yeah, I can do posters. That would be fun. Or yeah, I can have them use this activity. All these different things that they get excited about, and then you give them an avatar. And they realize, okay, I'm excited about using this, but now I have to do this, learn how to manage this avatar to make it work for me. So it's kind of reversed. I've gone from not giving the avatar at first and letting them have fun, but also get frustrated, to getting them excited, and then I give them an avatar. Then I work closely with them. We have, I'm saying like 4 or 5 now who are pretty active on our region. We're a community college, and for those of you outside the United States, you might not understand what that means. That we have for the first 2 years of a university degree, and we accept, it's a lot cheaper cost, and we accept almost everybody. So we get a lot of students who aren't very good with computers or have terrible computers themselves. And we get a lot of older students, people in their 40s and 50s and stuff, are going back for some education. And so we get students who really have a hard time just figuring out how to get into Second Life and do things. So we make it easy for students to get started. I have 3 hours the first week of class that I meet with students in a computer lab and get them avatars, get them to the campus if they need help. We've made a YouTube video of how to do this that most students are finding very useful. And we even just, a few weeks ago, we got a student technology lab started on the campus, and I got those guys trained in how to get students into Second Life. So our students get a lot of help. Students, And before, we didn't have this. 2 or 3 years ago, we didn't have any of this. We had a lot of students who were saying, I just can't get in there. I can't do it. I don't understand how this works. I don't understand this game. It's not a game. We try to tell them, well, they don't understand it. But now we've really worked on that. In this semester, I think I've only had one student who really had issues getting in. And she came to my office and I got her in personally. It was later after the first week. So we've got to really work with this fact. We expect that some students are going to have issues. Poor computers, bad computer skills. They don't understand exactly what's going on, never been in a virtual world in their life or heard of one. We got to be able to help them get started and not just design for the students who know what they're doing. Our last slide on what's worked. This is really constantly monitoring and determining what needs improvement and improving it. It'd be nice to build something and walk away and say it's going to work, but it doesn't. There are always issues, always things that have to be changed. With the handouts, almost every semester these handouts get a rewrite because we learn something different from the students, that this didn't work for them or this didn't make sense. I have my work study students go through the work handouts and they're not taking the class. They've never been in, most of them have never been in Second Life, and say, go into Second Life, do this handout and tell me what totally confuses you. Highlight the stuff and we change it all. So you've got to constantly do this. This is a fun example though. This student is not one of mine. This is a different class than I teach, but they're doing a biodiversity activity for animals. The BD on the flag is for biodiversity, A is for animals. They got to figure out which class of animal this reptile, this tortoise here is, and put it in a life tree for animals. And the handout said initially, and I gave them the coordinates. You'll see the coordinates in the top of your screen there where you are. And I said, these are your coordinates, and these are the coordinates you want to find for those flags. They had to find about 15, 16 flags on the campus. And so take those, go to those coordinates, tell them to walk or fly there. Well, I'm watching this student, and poof, she teleports away and teleports to the next one. And she did the same thing after being at that flag for a while. And what I realized is they're opening the map at the bottom of the page, entering the coordinates and teleporting. So much better than what I suggested. I immediately go into the handouts, rewrite the handout for the new idea here, and send that out to the faculty. Say, use this handout, don't use the old one. And it's amazing. I mean, you learn from watching students. And every semester, I ask all my students, how can I make this better? And 90% of it's garbage you get back, but 10% are gems. And we go in and we make it better every semester. Okay, so we've looked at some of the classic errors. And this is not that we're dumb or stuff that we made these errors. We made these errors because we just didn't realize how you have to adapt our educational practices to this new medium, this virtual world medium. It was not a purposeful error. It's just we all made these errors. If you've been in education, virtual worlds for much time, you've all made these errors. What we need to do, we learned that some of the things that do work, how to avoid these errors, and some of the things to build on. And now the next thing is how do we do it? How are we going to go forward with this? So all these institutions of higher education, they came into Second Life with high hopes and expectations, I think. I'm not exactly sure why they all came in. But I think they thought it would be useful to come in and do something and try to do teaching and use them as an educational tool. But we just didn't understand how best to design and use virtual worlds to achieve our learning objectives. You're not born knowing that. There was no textbook that told us how to do that. And so we made a lot of errors. But some people figured a few things out, and I learned from those people. And I was able to build on that. But many of these institutions, they just left virtual worlds in frustration. Faculty weren't adopting this. Nobody was using it. So our question now is, what do? Well, we have an understanding now, much better understanding. how to use these things for an educational tool for higher education. Where do we go with this? Well, we need to get this information out to people, so provide an educationally focused orientation designed to help faculty members develop an understanding and skills needed to be effective teachers in virtual worlds. You got to bring people in and give them this understanding. It's not easy. It's not really something that happens overnight. Yeah, we could be a textbook on this, or a pamphlet, or a manual, or something. It would be nice to have a group get together and work on this. So what would be included in such an orientation? Well, discuss the lessons learned from our collective experience. We've gone over some of those. Present the different ways we can use virtual worlds in education. Give them some training on tools and apps found in Second Life and other virtual worlds. I don't want to limit this to Second Life. Provide sample interactive educational builds. See what these are about. How do students use these things? Provide sample student handouts so they can. Our handouts have come a long way from the initial build ones we had. They were garbage, but we didn't understand really how you have to do these handouts. We have a much better understanding now. Give them an overview of the different educational focus groups. When you first come in, it's an alphabet soup. The Virtual World Education Roundtable, the stuff, Rockcliffe, all this stuff. All these things are out there, and you don't know what's going on. What's the focus? Who do you contact? What do they do? So, and the last thing, have landmarks to educational regions so you can visit. You can see what other people are doing. Well, fortunately, we have this. And it's on this region. It's at the Science Center Circle here. It's called the Educator Community Portal. Go visit it if you haven't. At the bottom, you'll find a handout that tells you how to use this. Tells you what's on every floor of this thing. And this was developed on this region by Hajime Nasamura. I'm not sure I say the name correct. He's Japanese. Jan, you'll see him around here sometimes. Maybe many of you know him. He did most of the building on this. In fact, I think he did 99% of it. He got ideas from a lot of other people. We collected ideas. We put them together. It's not exhaustive. There's still stuff to learn. There's still stuff to add. We don't have much about OpenSim. We don't have much about Minecraft, which are being used with kids. We don't have anything about Sansar or virtual reality, what's coming down the pipe here. But it's a great start. You can spend hours there and learn stuff if you haven't done much education in Second Life. But we still have some issues. And what are those issues? But we need to develop some mechanism to capture and share the creative things we're doing. We don't really have a mechanism right now where we feed these things into an educational community. Say, this is some new idea. This is something that I'm working on. There's not much exchange going on. And there's less today, I think, because a lot of people have left. A lot of educators have left virtual worlds. So how do we do this? How do we capture this stuff? I was active in OpenSim for a few months, but I'm not that active anymore. What's going on in OpenSim? How do we capture that? How's that different from Second Life? I know I've been into Minecraft also. I know they're being used in elementary schools in Virginia. So one school system got a grant to put it in most of their schools. The kids are doing fun things in there and learning. What are the lessons from that? How do we capture that? How do we put that in? How do we incorporate that in there? So there's a lot of learning still we need to do. And we still also need to determine how to identify educators who are new to virtual worlds and help them avoid the mistakes that we've done. ISTE used to have docents at their region. And there's 2 docents that still meet. I don't know if you're aware of this. On Monday nights at 8, my time anyway, it'd be 5 o'clock, Second Life time. These docents still meet on the ISTE parcel now. It's not 3 regions, down to 1 small parcel. And I go and talk to them frequently. And I was asking them, do you have any educators ever coming in? They said it's been months since an educator ever dropped in and talked to them. Somebody new to virtual worlds in education, want to get some feedback information. I don't know, you look at the literature in 2009, it was talking about how exciting it was going to be virtual worlds for education. You look at the literature in the last year, it's how virtual worlds are dead for education. It doesn't work for virtual worlds. We need to change that. And how we change it, how we get people coming back in and helping them to avoid the mistakes of the past and build on the future. It's kind of the big issues that I'm struggling with right now myself. So that's me. Northern Virginia Community College. That's my email. Happy to contact me by email. Send me an IM. Go in and look at my blog. You can see the blog there. It has all 66 lessons that we've learned. It has 17 ways that we've identified that educators can use Second Life. All those things are available over at the Educator community portal too, just 150 meters from where you're sitting. So come on in, be active, get involved, and let's dialogue about this stuff. Fortunately, the science circle's getting very active in education and stuff, and they're trying to we're working with these issues. That's one of the things, and particularly for science. It's a very great tool for science. A lot of our students love it. You can go in, hands-on, do things. You're not looking at a picture of a cell in a textbook. You're inside of a cell looking at those organelles. It's a very different experience. Happy to take questions. At the incentive for those coming in, talking about the students, their initial incentive is that it's a graded activity. And if they don't do it, they lose points for their grade. This is not extra credit sort of things. So they come in because it's a graded activity initially, but then they get in, they go, wow, this is cool. A good number of them, and they start looking at some of the activities that are not being asked about or graded. I see these students going all over the place and doing things. And so it becomes a fun way to learn other things too, and they start exploring and stuff. But it's initially a graded activity. And if they don't do it, they don't get the grade, there's points off, it's that kind of thing. We can think of how we're going to get together to develop a pamphlet or a book or ebook or something, how to do education or science education, at least in Second Life. We can bring in other people who do things beyond science. I know there's some great stuff for literature. There's some history stuff. So it'd be kind of fun to put something together so that there is a how-to book out there for people getting started. You're talking about the students being having a purpose or meaning. I think for the students, what excites them, the ones that are excited, is that they're hands-on learners. In science, this is what the Exploratorium is so fun about, that you go in, if you ever visited in San Francisco, you go in and it was designed for young students to come in and have their hands involved in stuff and moving stuff. And so when they come to our builds, there's things they have to do. They have to click on things. Things change. They can open a protein channel in a membrane and watch the molecules go through. This sort of stuff that they actually see things happening. And they're physically involved with manipulating stuff. And I think for them, that is the thing that makes it exciting for those students who are the hands-on learners who really appreciate that kind of stuff. So much different than looking at a picture in a textbook. Now, they can watch a video about that, and there are a lot of videos on there, but this is something they can actually manipulate. And they can open and close these channels, and they can get all sorts of things. Yeah, well, two things. One's interesting about the age of faculty in here. Most of the faculty are involved or older. I guess they have the time. They're not that worried about getting started and going in their program or getting tenure and stuff. But it's mainly older faculty you see adopting this stuff, which is kind of interesting. What's coming down the line that's where you want to really be networking. What's Sansar going to do? I have a builder who's been in Sansar. It's really, really different. She and I were discussing this. Can we put stuff into Sansar? And it's not a campus. It's like a bunch of series of rooms. You go into separate rooms and you come back out. It's going to be a very different experience. I don't think Sansar will replace Second Life. That's not really its purpose. But if we're going to design for Sansar, it's going to be a very different experience. We need to learn, but we need to be open to thinking about how do we do this in a different environment. It's just, it's one of the things you go in, you don't want to change what you do. That's kind of human nature. And this is the way I've always done it. I want to do it the same. But when you go into a new environment, you got to think, what's the value of this environment? What's the good things here that we can take a opportunity for doing stuff with it? What's some of the stuff to avoid? It's going to be difficult. And OpenSim and Minecraft, all these things are out there and being used, and we're not capturing much what's going on there either. The OpenSims, because a lot of people are really isolated a little bit. They have their own servers and stuff, but we don't really have really good feedback from that. I keep trying to get the Minecraft people to give me what are some of the lessons you're learning about Minecraft? And the one they come up with is it costly, and they can't afford it. So it's one of those, we need to capture that stuff. It's not there yet. So if we do a book, it's not going to be Second Life. It's going to be virtual worlds, education, virtual worlds, and it needs to really go on and include these other platforms. Yeah, lots of kids in Minecraft, and it's just starting to be used in education. Now, the kids are better at Minecraft than the teachers usually because they've been doing it at home. And the kids get excited. They go in and build things, and you can have them like, they got to build something of a certain size. Use some mathematics in there. What's the volume of this stuff? And these sorts of things. It's kind of fun. Yes, it's costly, and it's pretty much limited to the industrial world where you have good broadband and all this sort of stuff. We provide computers on campus to our students. We even have laptops they can take out in the library and use in the library. So there's lots of stuff they can do on campus, but they can't always do it at home. I would say probably 60 or 70% of my students do work at home on their own laptops, but we do have students who can't. You really got to bring that into your planning of how you're going to deal with a student who doesn't have the capacity at home on their own computer to do this programming. And I have gotten into Second Life from Africa. I go to Africa once a year usually, and I have gone to a internet cafe there and just pulled up Second Life, and it does work. I was in there, my avatar was there, and I could move around. I didn't have really great broadband or stuff, but I was still doing. It was so. This can go worldwide, and as the technology around the world's improving, I think we'll have more opportunities to expand this. You know, a lot of the places of the world, people don't have their own computers, but our own internet, but they do have internet cafes. All over Africa, there are internet cafes. You go in, you sit down, you give them some money, you can pull up Second Life. Well, that's an interesting idea. Yeah, a Kindle for virtual world education. I think we just need to get the use of this. Unfortunately, the use has gone the other way. A lot of people left. If we can rekindle interest and get people coming back in and create a market for this technology, you're going to get, I think, some things to be developed for it. You're welcome, DC. Um, I've seen some of the story stuff going on with the language. We have our Chinese language people. They teach Chinese. Their students come in, and they're doing more of interacting like in a story environment, which is kind of interesting. And it's just started. We'll have to see how that goes. But I think the students find it kind of interesting to go. And we have places where they can go and interact, like with a bank or a restaurant or something like that. It's all in Chinese, giving them some sort of a, but there's a story aspect to it. I did I built the history handout for our faculty. No one has used it as far as I know, but it was on the Norwegian, I was really out of Denmark, so Scandinavians moving to northern England, to York. And it was really well done. The build was well done. I didn't do it. I just encountered it, and I talked to the builder. They said, yeah, go ahead and use it. So we built a handout for it. It's a really nice story. How does this young couple leave what is now Denmark and move to York in northern England, and the things that go along the way? So I think some of the story aspects, especially in history and literature and stuff, you could do a lot with. I know there's one faculty member for theater at James Madison University, and they lost their campus in Second Life recently. That was one of the ones that went down because of the grant issue. But he's still working on, he's got his own space, and he does theater design there with students. They come in and design the stage, the costumes, these sorts of things, and the students get involved in that. And then they actually take that and make it in real world for a real stage. But they have all the stuff worked out before they ever start building on the stage itself. Yes, it's quite an adjustment. And we've all gone through this, but through to teaching virtual worlds. it's a different world, and you can't just do it like you always did. You got to think how we do this different and get the skill set. This is why so few people really do it. It takes a while to get that skill set and feel comfortable. We've really reduced the number of students who are unhappy about it or having problems. So I think if you really kind of work on that, you can get so the students appreciate the tool. They go in, they do it, they give you the stuff you need. And some of them, I mean, quite a few, I've had at least 3 or 4 students this semester say, this is really great. I wish I had this before. And so it's nice to know. It keeps you going that some students really find this as a great tool for learning. Yeah, front loading the students, that is good. You can front load the faculty and the students to get them to work in here. But the nice thing about with the faculty issue, you can do a go around. You just design the whole thing so the faculty don't have to come in. Once we started doing that, everything worked well. Before we did that, we said the faculty need to come in and do stuff. It was a no-go. And it's just changing your expectations. Once you change those, this thing works. But it takes some time to change your head around, okay, faculty aren't going to come in. Now what do we do? Once we sorted that out, it was easy.